Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Onyx Path Twitch, where today we have a couple of interviews going on. This morning, right now, I will be speaking with Mike Chaney, our Mirthful art director. We're going to get into a little bit of the process of how art is chosen and how the art is directed. I felt like the art director might be the guy to ask that. Uh, and then later on today at I think it's 3:30 Eastern. I'll be speaking with Chris Jones, who's one of the authors on Monster Kingdoms. The reason for the gathering, of course, is Monster Kingdoms. If you have not yet gotten yourself involved, Monster Kingdoms is currently funding on BackerKit. Um, we have gotten well over 200% of our goal right now. We've got over 600 backers involved. We're unlocking stretch goals left and right. So if you've not yet done so, please head over there and consider lending your support to this role playing game. It's the latest in the Earthbane Cycle. It uses Storypath Ultra, and it is a TTRPG world where the monsters we fear are the rulers, and we are the monsters we fear. So it's very cool. You get to play the monsters. You get to play characters that are traditionally considered evil. So fun premise, good stuff, good times. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time out of your, I know, ridiculously busy schedule and join us here. I really appreciate it.
No,
I
I
know
needed a breather from Curseborn anyway right now.
I would imagine so. I know that folks are very excited. I saw some discourse in the Discord this morning, um, just about being excited about seeing it sort of moving along the production line. I know we don't do release dates, but it's safe to say things are trucking along at a good pace for Curseborn.
Yeah, I'm almost done with the interior layout. I just got to do proofing basically, and most of the book is actually proofed. Because we're doing it in pieces.
Sure.
So once I finish up the last little bits I got, then we're gonna input the commentary from the first proof on everything, and then we'll do a second proof, which hopefully Rich likes, and then we'll get into getting that to everybody.
That's awesome. So yeah, extremely soon, imminent, one might say. So if you have already gotten your pre-orders in, you can expect it soonish. If you've not yet done so, you can still head over to the Backer Kit and pre-order Curseborn. Best place to get all information on Curseborn, of course, is curseborn.com. Or over at theonyxpath.com, where we do the news for all of our releases. So, diving into it, just so the audience is aware, if you have any questions, feel free to type question in the chat in all caps at the front of it, and as I see them, I will collect them. Um, I also, of course, have a few questions of my own just to run by you. So, I guess starting out broadly and then zooming in a little bit, when Monster Kingdoms is a new game line, but it's within the sort of larger umbrella of the Earthbane cycle. So, um, when you're looking at setting up the art for a game like that, um, I guess first question would be: do you treat the individual line under that larger umbrella as completely distinct, or are you looking at the other games in the Earthbane cycle as a comparison and contrast point, or how does that come into play when you're sort of planning out how you want the art to look?
Well, it's the similar style we would back in the old days when we did World of Darkness. Every World of Darkness book had a specific style or look. Some were very similar, some were very, very different. And I'm basically this is with the Earthbane Cycle the same way. Basically, World Below stuff can look similar to Monster Kingdom and vice versa. It's just when I'm sure at some point we might get some place where it kind of cross pollinates a little bit.
Sure.
Maybe some of the certain, but I haven't seen anything yet that kind of that kind of cross pollination of character types or monsters or anything like that yet. So
Right. And
but it's only
well,
the Kickstarter arts. I mean, we only got like 10 pieces. We still have a ton of art to buy.
sure, for Monster Kingdoms, absolutely. In the
Oh yeah.
world below, um, one of the things, I mean, there's a lot to love about the world below. I adore that setting and everything about how the core book came together. Um, but it's safe to say it's a very distinctive looking
Oh
book.
yeah,
You know,
this
it's got a very particular feel to
Roll
it.
Below is like that kind of old school first edition dungeon crawly kind of. I don't want to say like Menzo Baranzan or Drow type thing, but underworld,
Sure.
underground type thing. A lot of mushrooms and creepy critters. Whereas this Monster Kingdom is basically the arts, kind of the things that was inspiring. That was I know Rich was reading a lot of was it Sword of Berserk,
Mhm.
and of course I'm really big on stuff like more of the movies and stuff like Ninja Scroll or I want to say at some point even Record of Lodoss were a little bit,
Okay.
namely because of just basically the style of art it is, and it's one of the when you think of like a kind of a classic Dungeons and Dragons s kind of anime fantasy, Record of Lodoss was the first one that pops in my head.
Sure, that makes sense. And um, I know obviously the mood, the theme, the vibe, I guess, for lack of a better term, of Monster Kingdoms is a darker, more evil, more
Yeah,
I guess one might say bleak um, type of energy to it.
yeah, that's where the
Um,
whole Berserk thing kind of comes in. The real dark, bleak, kind of nihilistic approach of it, and like I said,
sure, sure. Yeah, and I think it really does show well, especially in the pieces that we have. I like there's a few specifics that really leapt out to me. The splat art is always beautiful. It's fun to see. We got that one, I believe, vampire like or actual vampire person down in the corner of our overlay today.
oh yeah,
Um, but that's beautiful to see, and I think those are always very evocative. But like. Um, Seeing the fulls that we have out for the Kickstarter are very cool as well. I love particularly that you've got this big muscular fellow kind of holding up the dragonkin head, um, and to me that kind of had like a almost like a Rosetta vibe to it, which I dug, which I think is very cool. Um, but yeah, I guess as you were putting this stuff together, were there any oh, I guess to back that up a little bit, you did mention what we have right now is the crowdfunding art, right? So
it's basically.
go ahead.
I think it's basically kind of if you're going in like terms of video games, it's like concept art or proof of concept
Mhm.
visualization. It's basically like this is what we're planning to bring you, but we might dial it in a little bit more, a lot darker. Maybe bring in some actual, maybe some more actual, more manga style to it. More of the line work with shade film and line.
Well, can you? That's an interesting point. Can you think of an example? I guess from the past where um, art that we have used in a crowdfunder has been then shifted as the book has shifted, or is it generally like it will maybe branch out from a different direction, but we're not really revisiting the stuff that's been in the crowdfunder.
The Storypath Ultra book is going to have right now. Basically, you've seen a lot. If you've seen the Storypath Ultra book artwork, it's basically all been kind of painted multiple genres, multiple like fantasy, mystery, survival horror, all that jazz. When the next part of we're actually going into, it's basically going to like one of the things I've always liked is I think there's a couple pieces we're doing with like mecha in it,
Hmm, okay.
fighting kaiju, and we're going to like if there's anything that's basically a great place to use actual full blown manga style, that's it.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's right, right
We
into
did
the
something
genre.
similar to that in the was it Mythic Shards in
Okay.
the was it the oh god I can't remember what that section was called. There's one with all the mecha and stuff like that in it.
Oh
And
yeah, the Cyber Scion. Yes.
yeah, that was one where we literally told the artist, manga, do the
Right.
manga style. No painting, just go crazy.
Right. It's
And they
very
did.
very clear frame of reference. Yeah, the art in that book is incredibly evocative of the genre differences, which is uh, cool to see. Another book that that springs to mind, though, I know I would say to a slightly lesser degree, only because of the fact that there's the common theme of uh, Larry defining the splat, the open page for all of them. But in RPG Anthology, there was a lot of like, oh, this art is clearly different genre because we're in this wildly different genre of film. So those kind of books it's very cool to see.
Yeah, well, that one was kind of weird because basically it's like, well, number one, I got to use Vince Lock again.
Right.
Whereas Vince is great at everything, but if you throw him at like 1930s gangsters, uh, any sort of Cthulhu, Lovecraftian style stuff, or horror in general, he was great. That's why he ended up doing. I think he did like either 2 or 3. He did some stuff in the appendix. Yeah.
That's awesome. Just real quick, I wanted to acknowledge Ethax. I hope I didn't kill your the pronunciation of your username, but wanted to just say that they were dropping in to say that they love the raw look of some of the art, that referring to the line work, etc. It definitely feels right for Monster Kingdoms to them. So thank you for that comment. Um, and yeah, I guess as you iterate on, then you start with kind of like, here's our basic uh, idea, our basic concept. And I can't remember when we were doing, did we have any of, well, I guess, yeah, we did, of course we did, now that I'm thinking back on it, because a lot of the creature art that showed up in World Below was refinements of things that Rich had done over the course of Inktober,
Yep.
the prior year. And I recall, as we were working on the layout and stuff, um, setting up how, like, we were making some iterations to how that was presented well into the proofing phase, if I
Oh
recall
yeah.
properly, right? Like we were like that might have been the last thing we actually settled on in World Below, was the final look of the monster in terms of presentation. Um, so I guess, can you talk a little bit about how that might how the layout process might evolve the way the art is presented in a book?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, like this one, since there's a lot of combat and beating people up and killing stuff, definitely go for more of like a number one, like any sort of border work would be jagged and kind of craggy. Uh, I still have to go back and review Sword of Berserk again to basically get a kind of a vibe off the way that it's been drawn. But since World Below was all kind of a claustrophobic, kind of really dense look, we might go a little bit more airier with Monster Kingdom.
oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because everything is, because there's open space to
Well, you got
explore.
you got an entire continent as opposed to a bunch of caves. So
Right, right. Yeah, and even the largest of cave networks in the world below, you're still inside of a subterranean cave. So there's while it's a very diverse environment, there are certain linchpins that always have to be present, and that's not quite the case with what we're dealing with Monster Kingdoms. Um, and then I guess just to round it out a little bit too, because we've spoken a lot at length about the connections between Monster Kingdoms and the world below. Uh, and Matthew even went so far as to effectively say, when we were doing his interview, um, that the connections are probably more overt between those two lines
oh yeah.
than they would be, like, say, between Monster Kingdoms and At the Gates. But can you talk a moment for regarding the At the Gates art process, where that's at right now, and how that might be reflecting, or how that and Monster Kingdoms might reflect on one another?
Well, At the Gates and Monster Kingdom both kind of share a very similar anime manga style.
Okay.
Although At the Gates is much more watercolor. Kind of try to think of a way to really put it. At the Gates is supposed to be pretty anime,
Okay.
and Monster Kingdom is supposed to be gritty anime. So it's kind of the easiest way to basically what it is. If you look at stuff like a lot of concept art from like Nintendo for like was it Legend of Zelda or the Breath of the Wild stuff like that. We used a lot of that as a kind of a jumping off point for a lot of the artists,
Okay, yeah, that
as well
makes
as as well as like Final Fantasy and stuff like that.
right, which is kind of a an obvious goes without saying connection, but it still is worth mentioning that there is sort of that JRPG,
Oh yeah,
your Final Fantasies, your Chrono Triggers, um, that's baked into the DNA a little bit.
I mean,
Um,
like I said, at the gates is basically the JRPG thing or the JRPG game, kind of like based on all those the really fun games from the '90s you could play on the old Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation. Whereas I kind of view Monster Kingdom as more like like the early 2000s where they had a lot of comic book houses kind of start up again, like Dreamwave and stuff like that.
okay,
They were doing really big bombastic kind of anime and stuff like that in their comics and stuff.
gotcha.
Even kind of down to like when Joe Madera launched Battle Chasers and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Even though
and
he ran eons late with them all the time.
yeah, I was gonna say it was one of the sort of late '90s, early 2000s. That and like Pit was like a game that there was like a book that you were aware existed, but like came out kind of just when a new issue dropped. Like,
Yeah,
it could be, could be monthly. I don't know that Battle Chasers ever got two in a row.
no, no, it did not. You might as well basically, I think the was it the steampunk comic finished before it did.
Yeah,
Like it finished however many issues and did a trade paperback, and then the series ended. Versus Battle Chasers, which I don't ever think did it ever end.
I don't know if there was ever an official wrap up on it. I was thinking about Pit the other day too, and I think there was. I think way later Dale Keown went back and did like a wrap up story for Pit. But I think it was actually like in the guise of a crossover with another thing, because I think when they finally did that sort of world-ending event, and then Image started to get chopped up, and the different studios sort of got sold off, and then Image became kind of a totally different thing.
Oh yeah,
Um,
they were the full on indie thing, and by the early 2000s,
right.
because they started to do they had Dusty Star, which has one of my favorite artists, which was Andrew Robinson.
Okay.
Powers, which is still one of my favorites.
Hmm.
There's a couple other ones. The beginning of Invincible.
Okay.
It's like I remember when the guy who did the art for Invincible did a Super Patriot limited edition or a full series, like a 12 issue or something like that.
Oh, for Awesome for Liefeld's line, right?
It's was Eric Larson's.
Oh, was it Larson? Okay.
And
Yeah.
since I was a big fanboy for Super Patriot and Dave Johnson, I of course had to buy that because the new guy, he's not Dave Johnson, but he's got a very similar style.
Right.
And I bought a ton of that stuff.
It's funny. I was thinking about that sort of era of comics, um, because there's a parody concept for a game that one of my old business partners and the one of the founding the company I run, Aegis Studios, um, my old partner and I had an idea for a game we were going to do that was going to draw heavily. It was going to kind of be a kind of a parody of the '90s, like big pecs, big guns, big boobs, like art vibe. I was thinking about that this morning. It's funny. Um,
Yeah, gotta love Champions New Millennium. I think I still got that somewhere in the house.
but yeah, so that stuff is kind of like a common, I guess you might say, a common sort of reference point, or like a middle of the reference point between the sort of brighter, airier, for lack of a better term, at the gates style, and the darker, more gritty Monster Kingdom style, right? So
Yeah. Well, it's like I hate to even use this as a term because it makes me sound old. But when I got into anime in the early '90s, basically what that means is basically I was watching the anime of the '80s and the late '70s,
sure,
which I consider the pretty anime, where everything looked very well. Everything was drawn so perfectly, and every line had a perfect meaning to it. And then there's stuff when you get to the '90s. I also really liked what was it? The Fatal Fury animes,
okay,
and Voltage Fighter Gokaiser, who's had a video game but never got to play it. Kind of symbolize that whole crazy explosion, light gleaming up of sharp objects the entire time, kind of photo flare
right. The
on
J.J.
everything.
Abrams
Oh yeah,
kind of vibe.
and that's what I was kind of figured the '90s anime was. That's kind of how I said. That's why at the gates it's pretty anime, and Monster Kingdom to me has always been the grittier, high action, super crazy, almost like I said, Battle Chasers is a perfect kind of example of it, honestly, to me. But
No, it makes sense. And one of the other things that I've noted about the Monster Kingdom's art that I thought was very it drew my attention anyway, is that it's extremely kinetic. Even the places where there's not really any well, there are very few pieces where there's not action. You know,
mhm.
really the splats are the only place where there's not some movement. And that one piece where the dude's holding the head up. And I don't have it in front of me. There may be action going on beneath him. Is that something? Because I it's I don't think that the art in the world below is by any stretch of the imagination like calm, right? But there's a lot of what one almost describe as a set piece. Like there's action going on, but the action's not necessarily the main thing that's going on in that art in the world.
Yeah.
Because we're showing these wild sort of underground environments. So is that an opportunity? Is that presented that way uh, as another means of sort of showing the brutality of the setting, or is there some other? Are there other factors that are involved when you're sort of looking at the level of kineticism in the art for Monster Kingdoms?
Well, I know Rich wanted a lot of action, and basically battle scenes needed to look like battle scenes. There needed to be more than two guys on them. Nobody talking or chatting. Everybody's wailing on somebody with something.
Right.
And the whole idea is basically tell the artist we want this, and then take the handles like go nuts with the gore. We don't care. Go nuts with violence. We don't care. That's what we want.
Right. This is a setting where, though you can use your words, most people don't.
Yeah, there's that
Right.
spot of the giant orc with the hammer. Yeah, he don't
Right.
use no words.
Right. Right. And so showing that level, and I think it also speaks to the difference in nature, right, of some of the games. If you have a game that's more intrigue investigation focused, maybe you'll have more people that are, uh, interrogating somebody or, um, having a heated discussion or something. But yeah, in Monster Kingdoms, you're more likely to just, if you disagree with somebody, you hit them in the face
Yeah,
with something sharp.
Monster Kingdom's the only place thus far I was able to get away with getting some guy basically wielding two giant broadswords at the same time.
Which is pretty awesome. Yeah, it's pretty fun. And it is, I guess, um, that's an interesting thing to explore too, because I think it's safe to say that um, the Earthbane cycle in general has been a pretty strong departure um, in the types of games that Onyx Path generally does, right? I mean, it's really um, Exalted is a type of fantasy, but it is a very specific type of fantasy.
Oh yeah.
Um, that I think it's fair to say is distinct, very distinct from what the Earthbane Cycle does. Um, Other than that, you've got everything would be more in like even Scion, though there are some supplements that lean into like more traditional fantasy. Scion is much more of an urban fantasy game.
Oh yeah.
Um, so was the, can you talk a little bit, I guess, about like what that departure is like and any particular challenges of that departure that you ran across? Trying to get into some more fantasy oriented stuff. Yeah, so hi, Streamcat, everybody.
Well, I think one of the biggest difficulty I think we've had with Monster Kingdoms basically is like we don't want it to look like Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
It can be you can have an homage to it, it can be a similar to it, but like I don't want Drow, I don't want, or
Right.
if we do have Drow, they don't look like that Drow. They, whatever we have, it looks different and unique.
Yeah, set it
And
apart.
looks oh yeah. You know, you can have I mean, not as much of the kind of the Western European medieval fantasy kind of inspiration to a lot of stuff, but
Oh, that's cool. All
there's
right.
a there's a certain role playing or a certain multi MMO right now that kind of reminds me kind of where I drew some of the vibes for when looking at stuff and kind of guiding some of the artists, which was World of Warcraft
Okay.
when it first started.
All right, so like WoW Classic, like early days.
Yeah, with
Um,
before Argomar got kind of crazy.
gotcha. Yeah.
Just the big, the kind of big spiky, you'd have like the battlefield barricades and stuff like that. Just big gnarly stuff.
Right. Everything kind of looks dangerous.
Yeah,
Like there's
everything
not
is
a
either
what?
everything has something to do with war, whether it got demolished by war or was built for it. Something like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. There's not a safe wall to lean on in the place.
Yeah, it's not like your Dragonlance where you can go traipsing through the forest and stuff like that with your loot and
Right. Right.
serenade the fairy dragons or something like that. You do that in Monster Kingdom, you might get smashed by that ogre or that orc with the giant hammer.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, creating a dangerous environment. So that brings up, I guess, a interesting process question. So you mentioned like as you and Rich are talking about, um, and feel free to stop me if at any point in this preamble of the question I get something wrong. But you and Rich get together, you talk about kind of the vibe, the feel. I assume at some point Matthews or whoever the line dev is involved in that conversation. This case being Matthew. Um, Once you get that dialed in, can you, I guess, give us a little bit of a look behind the curtain as to how that translates into what goes to the artist and how that then what that process looks like, refining what the artist is sending in initially to what we see like on the backer kit page.
Honestly, like first we start off with it like say for Monster Kingdom we'd do a meeting. At the time we did the meeting, the only thing I know of was what Rich's inspirations for art wise. I hadn't even read any of it yet. And so basically it's like, me and Rich will get there kind of, we'll nerd out for about half an hour about, certain anime comics or whatever, just kind of, because I basically work great from visual example as opposed to, sitting there kind of, and my thing is, movies.
Sure.
And so I pull from that constantly. Rich pulls from a lot more stuff like comics and books and stuff like that. And then kind of mash it all together. We get some kind of what we, get a general idea of what we want. And then basically Matthew will kind of take that vibe and just kind of try to reflect it in the art notes. And honestly, I mean, Rich will actually go and review art notes to make sure they kind of, really embody that whole idea. Because I know we did the meeting for Monster Kingdom on a Tuesday, and Matthew wrote the notes on Wednesday for the Kickstarter stuff. Rich reviewed them, and we actually contracted art on Friday.
So it was very like everybody was very clearly on the same page.
Oh yeah,
It was very fast. And it's not always that smooth, right? Like, I assume
No,
that.
no. I mean, like Curseborn, Matthew wrote art notes. We reviewed art notes. I mean, we reviewed those art notes for Curseborn for a month
Yeah, I
before
mean, well,
finally.
and Curseborn, I think too is, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. Curseborn's
Way more moving parts.
more of an outlier too because it's because everybody's so invested in getting it so specifically correct,
Oh yeah,
that it is deliberated and discussed and really sort of refined before anything moves forward on
hmm.
it.
But that's
Which
the way we've done like the art notes for that. We did it for. I want to say we did it for Scion second edition. I want to say we
makes
did
sense.
at least for Origin.
Yeah, because I mean you're redefining the whole line out the gate. You know.
Yeah, things got a little hectic with Hero because God, we didn't buy the art for that for like 8 months after we bought the Origin art. But there was that. We did Aberrant. I want to say that we did a little bit of art note review mainly because I know Rich wanted to go through the comic strips and stuff like that and make sure everything was jived like that. And
Well, and Aberrant's another place. I think I think it might be fair to say that Aberrant shares, like with At the Gates, a very clear, obvious touchstone that you can point to,
oh yeah,
or at least as I mean, it's very easy to say like superhero comics as a genre. I realize there are subgenres to death within that larger genre, but you do have some very easy examples to point to and say, oh, well, why does it look like you know this era of this publisher's books, and bang, there you go.
yeah. The first edition one was very '90s, as opposed to the one we have now is very much more lighter and fun. Maybe is a good
Well,
word for it.
I would say
Doesn't
so.
take itself seriously.
Yeah, I would say so, and I do think, and correct me if I'm wrong, by all means, but I seem to recall, especially in the second edition core, that different eras of publishing are reflected in those comic pages. We have a very um, Dark Knight Returnsy almost sort of spread at one point, but there's also a spread that looks a little bit more um, contemporary, I guess one might say. And there's a spread that looks a little bit more like 70s, pre Dark Knight Returns era, right? Like more Silver Agey. Is that
Yeah, we went the gamut with that one. We went there's one that's supposed to be like 1980s, inspired by sort of like the Dark Knight Returns
right?
style. There's another one. There's some that was done by a guy. Was it Dom, who is more of a. He actually does artwork for Judge Dredd 2000 AD comics.
Mm,
And I think he didn't start doing those until the 2000s. And we got Steve Ellis, who's a kind of the our 1990s kind of comics guy.
sure.
And we've got a lot of kind of like the Americanized anime manga style stuff
Right.
in there as well, which was real big in the early 2000s. And I got a little bit of kind of a classic, I guess, Silver Age, the 1980s DC Marvel look, which I'm still a big fan of.
Oh yeah, pretty stuff, for sure. And I think also it does a very good job of not only kind of establishing how the world of Aberrant feels, but definitely reframing it for folks coming in from first edition, where the art was very of the time.
Oh yeah,
And I think that's cool. I think that works very well. Um, just we talked about this a little bit in the ramp up to going live, but one thing I did want to touch on just real quick because it's been in the discourse publicly a few times in recent memory. Um, I would like to just touch on real quick as the art director of Onyx Path. What is the company's stance on artificial intelligence in our art?
what?
Artificial intelligence, AI.
Oh yeah, my bad. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Um, as far as me, I won't tolerate it. I mean, I won't buy it, and if somebody tries to sneak it in, I'll make sure they get fired and not get paid. It's, as a former artist, I'm like, it's kind of an insult that basically you're taking stuff that artists have already done, kind of, sifting it through a grinder and stuff like that, and then reassembling it. It's also was the plot of an entire Judge Dredd comic strip. It's like 6 pages where the computer stole a guy's comic style, and that was kind of weird when you read it in, like, 1989. It's kind of weird when it's a actual thing happening.
Yeah, yeah, it's bizarre how like the worst parts of dystopian fiction are all coming true, and all the fun stuff is like I don't have a cool cyber arm, a data jack, or a fun motorcycle, and the fashion choices are way worse than that was promised. You know,
I kind of hope we would move toward. I mean, I thought at one point there was the choices were between Star Trek and Star Wars,
sure.
but it's kind of the choice between Star Trek and Judge Dredd at this point.
Well, my wife and I are both diehard multi generational Trekkies. We were raised by Trekkies. And as we are fond of observing, the Federation wasn't born in a vacuum. They had to have the Bell riots and the eugenics wars and World War III. All that had to happen before Zephyr Cochrane could fly. So we're just unfortunately living in the shitty prequel to Star Trek.
Well, at least we
But
might get the Borg there, and we get to fight against the. I don't know. They go back in time to Earth, and
it's true. Yeah, maybe we'll find some Borg laying around. We can have a little spark of hope. Um, but yeah, I appreciate you speaking clearly on that because I know that there's been some, you know, it's fair to say, speaking as someone who is currently licensing a property that is owned by Onyx Path but was created under the auspices of White Wolf for my own company, I understand that sometimes the average consumer might get a little confused about the web of ownership. And I know Ian has a handy graphic that she likes to share around on Discord and on social media of like who owns what. That also now needs to be updated. Um, so I appreciate the clarity, the clarity on the AI issue because again, sometimes things will come out. They'll go into the discourse. It'll be a product for a line that we may have worked on in the past that we don't actively work on right now. And, the tendency is, well, Onyx Path must have done AI.
no, no, no.
So that's yeah, not
Basically, at some point it may become an inevitability that companies are going to have to use it. But the only reason you can use it now is basically so you can save money on your bottom line. And like, I didn't get into making role playing games to make money.
right. Yeah, there are plenty of other industries that one might want to look at if they
You
want to
know,
make some money.
if I, if you want to make tens of twenties of dollars, then by all means get in the role playing industry. But it's just basically like anytime someone does the AI art for a role playing game book, I don't care if you're the biggest fantasy role playing game out there, or you're one of these little mom and pop things that still do stuff in black and white. If you're using AI, then like that's lower than using clip art as far as I'm concerned.
Sure. Yeah. I
And
mean,
when I say clip art, I mean the kind of stuff you would buy at the art store that will sell silhouettes of like telephones and kids.
for sure. Yeah. I mean, and honestly, Um, to my mind, that's more creative because you have to figure out how to take this limited resource and make it function. So
Oh yeah.
I think you are using more creative energy to put clip art in a book than you are to just to type some prompts up. I realize I don't want the whole internet to come for me about the creativity required to write AI prompts. I'm told that you have to do some work to do that, but I wouldn't know because I've literally never tried it. Um, I just don't intend to.
If you don't put pencil to pen or stylus to screen and draw it yourself, it's not art.
Right.
The computer's doing all the work for you, and you're just basically telling it what to do. That's not doing art.
Yeah, yeah,
It can be
and
an art pig or whatever, so be it.
yeah. I mean,
But the stuff it's regurgitating and reminding, without the artist that came beforehand, they wouldn't have it.
sure, sure. And there's been some discussion too about like how well, if you study someone's art style and you mimic that art style, aren't you doing the same thing? And no, because you are still putting your own. Even if you decide I love John Romita Jr.'s art, and I'm gonna draw like John Romita Jr. and I'm gonna make my entire life about learning how to draw the way John Romita Jr. draws. You're still bringing your own personality, experiences, skill or lack thereof to the effort. You're
Mm,
not just cranking out something that you're not tracing John Romita Jr., which is
yeah.
effectively, it's a combination of different traces.
I mean, a lot of people that are self-taught will start out aping other artists to just kind of get it going. Like, I make no shame about it that I would make Magnolia clone from the 90s.
Mhm.
Have I evolved past that? Yeah. But I had to start out somewhere.
Sure.
And to be honest, if you're a really good, artist in the style of Magnolia or that stuff, he tends to hire you to do comics.
Right. Right. If the artist whose style you're emulating goes, hey, that's a pretty good job, and I make enough money, I don't have to draw everything. I don't have to aggravate my carpal tunnel this month, so come work
Hmm.
for me. Yeah, and and so it is. I I have a whole different level of complaints that comes about the when you look at the words side of the AI argument, but um, the art side, it's so very clearly, um, you know, it's very complicated and very technical Photoshop, right? It's really no different than like I'm gonna take 5 pictures and slap them together and make a collage, and then I'm gonna trace that collage. It's a photo mesh, um, except without even the work it takes to trace it.
Well, I mean, even when it comes to photo mash, if you actually go and do all the stuff to it to make it look like an actual piece of art,
Right, like you're selecting the photo. You're making choices as a person. Yeah,
it's like God, I can't remember the guy. What was the artist? Dave McKeon.
yeah, absolutely.
If you look at any of the album art he did back in the 90s, a lot of it was photos of things that he would basically take and tweak and kind of merge together. Like Fear Factory's to manufacture is basically a rib cage and a metal UPC coat kind of fused in together. It's all done in Photoshop. It's all using photos and pieces from that, but it's been manipulated and actually done has artistic touches to it and all that stuff and actually made it something else.
Right. There's a transformative process to it, and there's a
It's even, I mean, I guess, of course, it's like kit bashing in miniatures. It's basically you take some two pieces that are already there, you put them together, and you got to put a lot of work into making them work as a new thing.
sure, absolutely. Well, and that actually brings up a whole another topic that I did want to touch base with you on while we got you here. Hello to all the new arrivals. Mike and I are talking about art in general, but also art about Monster Kingdoms. We got about 10 minutes left on the stream, give or take. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and type question in all caps at the top of the chat. Go ahead and pop it in. We will try to answer as many of those as we can. But Yeah, and also, of course, if you've not yet gone and backed Monster Kingdoms, please consider doing so. I'm gonna pop that link in the chat again, um, if I can type properly. But what I was gonna say was the you mentioned minis and kit bashing. I know that you have a uh, passion for miniatures.
Oh boy,
Um,
do I. Got an hour?
so I guess how has that does that affect your approach to art direction for role playing games? And if so, how do those things connect?
The biggest thing it does for me is basically color theory.
Okay. Okay.
As I've kind of progressed with that, it's basically I've gotten really into things like, earth tones, going into things and basically doing limited palettes with like, cold palettes, warm palettes. Hey, let's see how many shades of green I can use to make this color.
Okay.
That sort of thing. And that goes into a lot of it. I mean, I think Rich used to get annoyed with basically the fact where I would pick out my Pantone colors. I would basically use the old Citadel color chart and go like, okay, we're going to use heart turquoise. Then I have to get out and then, posing as far as like, critiquing the poses of stuff for like splats and stuff like that. That kind of gets in there too.
Sure, yeah, I would imagine so because, well, especially if you now you do a lot of like kit bash stuff, or do you focus mainly on painting?
I mainly focus on painting. I did a lot of kit bashing in the '90s, but my kit bashing is terrible. But my thing is that if it doesn't look like it's supposed to be intended to look that way, then you didn't do it right. And so,
Well, and that yeah, that's what I was going to say is I would imagine that kit bashing successfully is really difficult because you're dealing with parts that weren't designed to go together. Um, you see some people that do amazing stuff with it. You know what I mean? Like you would never guess.
well, Rich did some really cool stuff with his old Blood Bowl Undead team back in the day for Frankenstein.
Yeah, yeah, and and that requires, I would think, just a great deal of understanding of anatomy and of the way things, what looks right, what doesn't look right.
Yeah,
Um, let's
you don't
see.
have to do a whole lot of kit bashing these days because
Well, I mean, now you
there's
can
a mini you want to paint. It's out there somewhere.
sure, or you can get a STL and 3D print it at home, or make an
Yeah,
STL and 3D print it at home. It's a wildly different. It's wildly different than having to go schlep it down to the store and carry home a bag full of lead minis that are probably going to give you poisoning when you play with them. It's amazing how things have changed. Um,
but I mean, sometimes you just want to paint a wizard that looks like a donut.
yeah.
And I had a model that's basically a wizard donut and a rogue hot dog, or that was an order of fries. It's the rogue. Yes.
That's awesome. I've briefly flirted with painting minis, but I'm just not. I am much more skilled with the art of wordsmithing than I am with the art of art.
I kind of retired from the world of actual doing art to paint minis in 2004.
I've heard that it can become time consuming to the point where it's kind of a full time job.
Yeah, I mean, mine has it. My hobby has an entire room devoted to it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I imagine it can get intensive. I still have some. I was able to acquire a copy of Battleground, an old uh, original printing of the Battleground game for Trinity. And I keep meaning to paint those. I'm going on vacation very soon. Maybe I will take that opportunity to
Wash
try.
them with soap and water before you do anything,
I will do so.
and super glue. Super glue, super glue. Don't use modeling glue. Use super glue.
Duly noted. Duly noted. I will make sure I do that. I will. Maybe I'll even shoot you an email for some tips if I actually manage to get into the box. Um, I know that I can't remember the name off the top of my head of the group that we're partnered with, but they're getting ready to. They're making some pretty good progress on the sort of digitization of
Oh yeah,
Battleground, which is interesting to see, to check out. If you're on our Discord, I'll pop the Discord link in the chat. Um, there's a channel I think that Ian has that's kind of dedicated to that, sharing like they put out like new minis, like the pictures of what the minis are looking like and how the sculpts are coming along and stuff.
I do hope they put out some of the unreleased stuff because I've got all the stuff they made, but I really want to get some of the stuff they had intended on doing
Mm.
later on, like all the other Vargs and stuff like that. And I think there was a tank in at one point.
Well, and do you know offhand if those things are going to be developed as part of that license, or
I have no idea.
it'd be interesting to
They
see.
did Battleground while I was off on walkabout in '99.
Gotcha. Okay.
I was
Yeah.
working in the distribution side of the hobby industry, and the year Battleground came out, it had to fight against Clan War from Eldorak, Warhammer 40K, whether it's in the third or fourth edition, and Reaper did a miniature game that year.
Who else did?
Reaper.
Really? I didn't know that they'd ever done their own mini game.
And then they, what was it? Can't remember what the company's called anymore. But they did Warzone Second Edition that November.
Gotcha.
So that was a rough year to be doing miniatures because
It was kind of
so much came out.
the market was a little on the flooded side.
I don't know what it was about 98, but it was crazy.
Huh. Maybe there was a like a technological jump of some sort that had happened just before, and something get easier to do or cheaper, maybe. Um, or maybe it was just a trend. I mean, sometimes things would. It was. It's weird to think about, especially like I would imagine probably a little bit more so for you because I think you're a couple years older than I am. Um, how vastly different the world has become with the proliferation of the internet in terms of things like what are people into, knowing like being able to gauge like what's popular, being you know what I mean? Like it was the way that was handled pre-internet was wildly different.
I just miss the good old days in the early 2000s. Just like bulletin boards.
Right. Yeah. I was.
Way before social media, when people still had to make websites.
Yeah.
Or if you didn't have a ton of cash to use Dreamweaver, you had to learn how to use HTML.
And if you wanted to watch a video of anything, you had to go to Newgrounds and watch it there.
You better have a. I remember what was it when MTV put all their entire library up on the internet. It was in 98, 99. And we got DSL 2 weeks after that happened, and I thought that was the most awesome thing. It's like I can watch videos from Fear Factory for once.
Yeah.
And yeah, my wife started downloading was it torrents of Stargate SG-1, which she then had to try to piece together and then put on DVD, and it was not pretty.
Yeah, because there was no real way of watching them. Yeah, wild
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, I mean, when we first started watching DVDs, we had a DVD player on the computer,
Mm-hmm.
and we got a 20-foot coax to go from the computer to the TV, so we could watch DVDs. Because that's back when DVD players were still like $250, $300, and
Oh, sure. Well, and now you got kids they'll find an old like 3.5 inch and they'll be like, "Oh, you 3D printed a save icon." Like, what? No, kid, that's what the save icon was
that's.
based on.
I mean, I'm so old. I still have a boombox with cassette tapes down in the garage.
Well, what's old is always new. There's always resurgences.
Oh yeah,
There's a whole group of people out there that are enthusiasts for vinyl. I never am one to slap the dice out of somebody else's hand. I don't understand that particular trend, but I think it's cool that people are into it. I think it's cool that is able to get out there. I'm from a background where like vinyl sort of never died in the punk scene because it was cheap and easy to make. you know, so that's kind of where it kind of stayed alive in my experience anyway. And
that
then
was my experience back in like the '80s. Was basically a lot of cassette tapes because we would trade them over. You trade them with other people in other places to get different music.
right, for sure, yeah, you get there's this term that floats around called mixtape that actually used to be tapes that you would put different songs on and then trade with
Mm-hmm.
people. That's where it comes from originally. Um, Back in the olden days, I was there, Gandalf. I was there 3,000 years ago.
I remember what was it? I traded. Oh God, I can't remember what I traded for. What was it? A bootleg of one of Creator's albums.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and too, like there was music that I got into. I had tapes I would get when I was 12, 13 years old that I wouldn't know what bands they were until, months and months later, possibly years later. Some of them I never quite figured out what band that song was because it was just it was just on a mixtape with 20 other things and my friends didn't write, the band names on the track list.
And then they all evolved into that's what I call music CDs.
Yeah, there's, you know, compilation collections going out and whatnot. And now it's all on the Spotify playlists.
Oh God, do I miss that? That's what I call music CDs and old double IMAX with the big blueberry. Oh, I miss those days. See-through video game consoles.
It was good times. Well, speaking of good times, we are at our time. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to come hang out and talk about Monster Kingdoms. Everybody who did chime in or pop in, thank you so much for being here. I do want to remind you one more time Monster Kingdoms is still on backer kit. We've got, let's see, 9 days left. We are currently at 34,225, so not too far from our next stretch goal. Let's keep the momentum going. If you're watching this and you want to swing back through at 3:30 Eastern, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, I will be interviewing Chris Jones, who's one of the authors on Monster Kingdoms. Mike, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome.
Greatly appreciate it, and we will talk to you more soon.
All
Have
right.
a good time, everybody. Bye.